Hi, I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is our 39th episode, so we're looking forward to the big 4-0 next week. Now, tonight we're going to talk about lunches in schools. Should we be bailing out families, and are the lunches woke? More MPs behaving badly or still behaving badly. Should we be concerned about our declining marriage rates and fertility rates? And why do New Zealand kids have the worst rate of bullying in the OECD, or one of the worst rates actually? And we're going to do a spot quiz as well, a pop quiz as they call it in school, to find out the panellists' views on a few current controversial issues. It's going to be very revealing. Speaking of the panel, let's find out who they are tonight. We've got a beautiful lineup. And firstly, we've got Simon O'Connor, who still looks very stressed. How's that first week of work going, Simon?
Oh, look, the boss and team, actually mainly the boss, he's just very, very difficult to work with, this Bob fella. Just don't tell him, Bob. Oh, hold on. Oh, good. Yeah, so it's been such a long day. No, it's going well. Loving it.
Okay, good. And we'll give everybody a bit of a preview of your coming week because you're very busy. And Ashley coming from Escavalley. There we are. I always struggled to remember it. Ashley Church, how are you?
I'm good. I watched back last week, and I spoke with the rapidity of a racehorse commentator. So my theme tonight is to speak much more slowly. I'm putting a real emphasis on it. So
okay,
we'll see how that goes.
You were struggling to breathe through both nostrils and your mouth. I think you had the bad flu, didn't you? Yeah, so that was the excuse. Up north to near the Brindewans and Mel, have they opened that road yet, or is everybody still travelling past you?
We're still travelling past. They reckon there's another 3 weeks-ish, pending nothing else goes wrong.
Okay. Oh, well, good luck on that. Ala Pomalele, you getting any sleep?
Evening. I just take whatever sleep comes my way. So, yes, I should say yes.
Okay.
Not so much this past week, but yes.
Okay. And Rodney Hyde, somebody told me that you wear pink at work. Is that correct?
Yeah, just pink overalls.
Pink overalls. Why are they pink?
It's just, well, it's not making a political statement. It's just they're on special down here.
Okay, we'll take that excuse. Video of the day, team. Chris Hipkins was asking the Prime Minister about the gender pay gap, and Winston Peters grabbed the chance to ask a very relevant question.
Mr. Speaker, what's the current national gender pay gap?
Sorry?
What is the current national gender pay gap?
Yeah, just under 9%.
Very good. Does he think it's acceptable? Does he think it's acceptable that women...
Just hang on.
Does he think it's acceptable that women working in New Zealand earn just under 9% less than men for the same work? If not, what's his government going to do about it?
No, we actually want to see pay parity in this country. We're going to work very hard to make sure that happens.
Winston sitting there very quietly.
Why does he think we have a gender pay gap in New Zealand?
Oh, there's a long-standing number of reasons that that has caused that pay gap. That's not acceptable. We're going to keep working hard on it.
What are some of those reasons?
Well, there's a number of reasons for it, but I'm just telling you it's an unacceptable gap. We're going to work hard on it.
Supplementary question.
Ronald Winston Peters.
Seeing as this matter is related to gender, it's very important for the government. Has he received information as to what a woman is?
Look,
well, you got to give him credit for coming in at just the right time and asking the right question. Speaking of which, he was involved with introducing a bill which is actually under New Zealand First MP Tanya Unkovic's name, with the help of Winston Peters, that would require public toilets to have a boys' toilet, a girls' toilet, and for those who can't figure out the first two, a unisex toilet. The Dominion Post, which is now the Post, had this article, and it's our image of the week, and this is what it said. Winston Peters wants to ban unisex bathrooms, which of course is a complete and utter fabrication of the proposed bill. Utterly false, and the media wonders why people don't trust them. It was eventually changed after we highlighted it, and they received a few disgruntled calls, I suspect. Right, team, we're going to start with a pop quiz, as my teacher daughter tells me they do at school. And we're going to just get some yes, no, and a very quick reason for some of these current topics that are going on. So, look, I think I'm just going to have to sort of go in order so that you guys get used to it. So I'll go across to Simon, Ashley, then down to Mel, Alla, and Rodney. So, Rodney, you get it sweet, but I will reverse it halfway through. And so here we go. Are you guys ready to go? So we just want a quick yes or no and a very quick reason for your yes or no. Yes, I'm going to answer these questions as well, so I'll go after Rodney. All right, question number 1. Should MPs get a pay rise? Simon O'Connor?
Yes, they should. They haven't for many years and they work hard, but now's not the right time. How's that for a political answer?
Well, very good, seeing you're no longer there. Ashley Church?
Yes, they should. We have a bad habit of thinking we're experts in everything as members of the public. We've got a remuneration authority. It's done its work. We should be guided by its determination.
Mel Taylor?
Yes, they should, especially, excuse me, if they hold an electorate. They actually put a lot more work into it than I think most people understand.
Okay, Ala Pomalili?
Yeah, I mean, they've had a pay freeze for the past 6 years. I don't think the timing matters, so people just need to get over it. So, yeah.
Okay, and Rodney Hyde?
No, not at all. It's a great privilege being a politician. It's disgusting to me that it's regarded as something you get paid for. I wouldn't pay them $1, but at best, I guess you have to pay them something. I'd pay them the average wage. And that would give them an incentive to lift it.
Okay, and I say yes, because if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, so which we may have. So 5-1 on that particular one. Next question. Is $3 enough to make a decent lunch for a child at school? Simon?
On average, over time, yes. Yeah. We've
Okay,
been able to feed
Ashley?
our kids on average with that. Keep it simple.
Ashley?
Yeah, assume they're being put together on a bulk commercial basis, then yes, absolutely. I'd imagine you could put together a pretty decent lunch for that.
Okay, Mel?
Yes, I've done an example, and that is a lunch that was made for $2.27, and that wasn't doing bulk.
There we go. I love practical examples. Well done. Alla, hard to follow that one.
Yeah, I was going to say your pies are still around $3, so yep.
Okay. Rodney?
Luxury.
Luxury $3.
I mean, if parents are doing it, the government can't do anything cheaper than what we can do it ourselves for, and we do a better job. You give it to government, it's going to cost a lot of money, it's going to be rubbish every time.
Okay. And I say yes, because I'm pretty sure my mother's lunches were probably about 50 cents. It was a sandwich, a packet of raisins and a fruit. Right. Next question. Should people be able to register to vote on election day? Simon?
No, it just complicates things. So no, they shouldn't.
Okay. Ashley?
No, if you can't get off your backside and vote at least three or 4 weeks beforehand, and register at least 3 or 4 weeks beforehand, then as far as I'm concerned, you've forfeited the right.
Mel?
No, I think too many things can go wrong.
Alla?
No, logistically a nightmare.
Rodney?
No, not at all, for all the reasons stated.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm a no as well, because you've already had 1,080 days to register, which is 3 years before the actual election. Right, next question. Is quinoa, couscous, hummus, and sushi woke? Simon?
Unless they have souls, no, they're not woke, but they're quite, if you will, there's a theological point to get the day going. No, they're not woke, but in terms of just sort of, if you will, luxury in foods, I don't think they're a necessity for school lunches.
Although sushi you can get for $8 or $9. That's the same as a pie, chips, and Coke, isn't it?
Well, I'll come back to what probably many of us were fed as kids. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm supposed to keep these questions simple. Ashley?
With the possible exception of accidentally eating hummus from time to time, I don't eat any of them, so clearly they're woke.
Mel?
No, although I think they are known to be popular among the woke.
Ah, very subtle point. Ala?
No, I like all those foods too.
So are you saying you're woke or you're not woke?
It's food. Food shouldn't be labelled food as food. It's nutritious.
Okay. Rodney?
Totally woke. And it says a lot about the person eating them, and I'm a bit worried about the company I'm keeping on a Monday night.
Yeah. Okay, and I'd say they're woke because they're not even English words. Right, next question. We're going in the reverse order this time. Should Julianne Genter be thrown out of Parliament for having a tantrum in Parliament, Rodney?
No, not at all. You just can't throw MPs out as much as you'd want to. It's up to the voters. They put her there and they can vote her out. Just don't vote for the Greens.
Ala?
No, I've seen much worse, and so no.
Okay. Mel?
No, but I think there needs to be some accountability for actions.
Okay. Ashley?
No, but I don't think we've seen the last of troubles for the Greens, of which this is just yet one more example.
Simon?
It's a no as well. You get your chance every 3 years to vote for the MPs or the parties you want. It's a dangerous territory if we're going to start kicking MPs out on actual or perceived wrongs.
Anything to confess there, Simon?
Well, I don't need to anymore. I'm out of Parliament.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that you talked about earlier. When you get paid, you're a monkey. So,
Peanuts.
Yeah.
I would say yes, because one less greens on my plate always pleased me when I was a kid. Are you concerned about the integrity of our elections, Rodney?
Very much so. I think there's been a constant undermining of the electoral integrity in New Zealand, and also a lack of political membership means that the polling booths aren't being housed and monitored like they were as of old, particularly when we had first past the post and we had those all-important marginal seats where great scrutiny would be given. I'm also very concerned about things like the push to have mail-in voting and then what we discussed earlier, this on-the-day enrolment. So yes, I'm very concerned.
That was a really long answer. Did you used to be the Minister of Internal Affairs or whoever runs elections?
No.
No. Okay. Ala?
I'm not across it, so unsure.
Shapers. Right. Mel?
Yes, and extended things like how much parties get in advertising, and the integrity. I think there's arguments as well for both sides, yes and no.
Ashley?
I was under the previous government with things like the aforementioned move to registration on the day, and probably even more damaging moves to reducing the voting age to 16, both of which were clearly about trying to gain an electoral advantage. But both of those are off the table, and at the moment I'm not particularly concerned about the integrity of elections, no.
Okay. Simon.
Ashley too.
Others.
Yeah. No, look. Overall, I'm not worried. I think it operates relatively well. But actually, what both Ashley and Rodney touched on, there's things around the periphery which should begin to worry people. But if I might, this is not America, and just in case there's any subtext of people listening, the issues over there aren't here. But there are certainly challenges that we need to address, including where they put voting booths these days, which do seem to be rather biased at times.
Okay, and the reason that we did raise this question, just to clarify, is that the Auditor General's report that just came out said that there were 25 incorrect vote totals at polling places. 25. A whole ballot box went missing. Some electorate managers didn't check the data from their electorate. The National Office also failed to check data submitted. And there was quite a few interesting things, and not all dual votes were removed from the count. So maybe read the Auditor General's report, and viewers may have a different thought on that. Okay, let's continue. 2 more questions. Did you try and use less power last Friday morning, Rodney?
Yes, I turned my generator on and ran it for an extra hour.
I said less power.
Well, I use more.
Off the grid. Okay. Ala?
No, I wasn't aware that we were supposed to conserve power.
What have you been
Numbers on
doing?
all day.
Oh, okay.
He was busy eating hummus.
Yeah, that's right. Mel?
No, not at all.
Okay. Ashley?
Oh, we're pretty frugal anyway. I think we sort of had a bit of a go at using a little bit less, but no, basically not really. No.
Mm-hmm. Simon?
Don't sack me. But yeah, actually, Rachel and I and the family tried to dial it back a little bit, a bit like Ashley. We're quite frugal already, some good habits, but no, we did try to dial it back just a little bit.
Okay. And no, I apologise. I turned on the heat pump because it was super freezing where I was. Now, final question. Will you be wearing a pink shirt on Friday? Rodney, you'll be wearing pink overalls, won't you?
No, I'm in a series of letters with my local high school and local primary school about Pink Shirt Day. I regard as an abomination. And I think it's a disgusting thing that occurs in our schools, and my children do everything in their power to disrupt it.
Okay. Ala, will you be wearing pink?
No, I'll be in black.
Okay. Mel?
No, I don't own anything pink. So, and saying that, I am dead against bullying.
Correct. Ashley?
On any given day, I'm festooned in all of the colours of the rainbow anyway, provided that rainbow's blue, white or black. So it'll be one of those colours.
It's whatever your wife tells you to wear, isn't it, Ashley?
Pretty much, yeah.
You just get out of bed and it's waiting for you. She's chosen it. Simon?
More or less, yeah.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. Like Mel, I've got no time for bullying, but I don't have time for this pink shirt movement, which is a usurped activist activity now. So no,
okay.
I'll be like Ala. I tend to wear a lot of black, as has been demonstrated tonight.
Okay, well done. Yeah, no, I definitely won't be. Right, let's just check just a couple of the comments. HB says all voting booths need to be accessible ramps, rails, toilets and water. Sounds like it's like a restaurant. Oz says the amount of media time parties get even on debates is grossly disproportionate. True, it violates fair democracy. Ronald says Julianne Genter could be suspended from Parliament for a few sessions so that she can ponder her behaviour. The only trouble with that is that's kind of like being told you can't go to school for a couple of days, and that's quite enjoyable. Or, you got to go to your bedroom and you just go and play with your toys. And Nicole says, Dad, please learn how to say quinoa. How do you say quinoa? Ala, you're woke. How do you say quinoa?
Just how you said it.
Yeah, quinoa.
Quinoa.
Oh, is that what it is? Well, see, that's why I don't eat it, because I'm not woke.
Oh, okay. No,
right.
Hey, if I can say it, anybody can.
Okay, let's get into it. According to statistics just released, team, the general marriage rate has dropped to a record low last year. Only 9 couples per 1,000 people eligible to marry. Let me just show you that. I'm supposed to press this. In 1971, you can see at the top there, the marriage rate was about 45 and the divorce rate was 5. Today, the rates are almost the same, 9, and the divorce rate is 8. Only 2.5% of all marriages are same-sex marriages, which are basically bolstered by overseas couples. Now, the age of marrying has increased. Could be a good thing, more mature. New Zealand is marrying about 8 years later in life. 1971, it was about 21 years old for women and 23 years for men. It's now 32 for females and 33 for males. And the other concern is that, likely as a consequence of the falling marriage rates, New Zealand's fertility rate has also reached an all-time low. It's 1.58, and for a population to replace itself, it's got to be 2.1. So that's basically 1 for each couple and 0.1 for those who don't have children, can't have children. So 2.1. And that is the lowest on record. So we are well down, but it is a problem in the Western world. So I'm going to start with the academic here, which is Ala, of course, because you went to Otago University, so you will be very bright. And of course, you've added to the fertility rate by having little Samuel recently. So should we be concerned about our declining marriage rate and declining fertility rate, or can we just import lots of people?
I think so. I mean, it's not just a trend. That's just a New Zealand-based trend. It's obviously across the West, but also in Asian countries as well. I think the more concerning part would be in terms of our workforces. What does it look like for our society? Our demographics are obviously going to change. Immigration is going to play a big part in future planning. So, and I think obviously it raises other questions. I know for myself as a first-time parent and a new mum, in terms of how workforces aren't always accommodating for families or mums, and whether a trend like this can actually change some of that in terms of introducing more family-friendly policies, revising our paternity and maternity leave. Like in my husband's work, he managed to get 10 weeks off, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is if it's full paid, and he spent the first 6 weeks at home with me, and I had a bit of postnatal depression in that time. So I think I've sort of sympathise with women who don't have that kind of support. So yeah, I think this raises questions around, well, how can we accommodate women or families who actually still want to contribute to workforces but be at home with families? And I think also for me it's kind of scary. My generation isn't opting for motherhood. They don't see sacrifice as part of what they want in their futures. They want to be child free. So I think it's a sad picture, but I think I'm also hopeful in the sense that there are many people who are equally concerned and want to do things to change this.
Okay. Mel, any concerns that the marriage rate's decreasing or the fertility rate, or why is it?
Oh, there's definitely concerns. I think a lot of the problem at the moment is financial. I've got two of my older children that would love to have more children, and they're amazing parents. But the reality is, they financially can't afford to. They want to save for a house. There's so much pressure, and they actually don't want the mum to have to go to work when Bubby's 6 weeks old or whatever. So they do it tough so that the mum can stay home with the kids until the kids are going to school. A lot of families don't have that luxury, and times are financially tough. So people are thinking twice about having children.
Yep. Okay, Ashley, you concerned about the rates?
Two separate issues at play here. So in respect of the fertility rate, the population of the world was somewhere between 350 and 500 million for about 1,000 years. And then toward the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, it shot up and it's now sitting at about 8.9 billion and climbing. So from my perspective, it's actually a good thing if fertility rates are dropping. Interestingly, and China is probably the textbook example of this, there's a really strong relationship between the development of wealth and declining birth rates. The wealthier a nation gets, the fewer children it has. That's happened in the West. It's now happening in China and in other Asian countries as well. So from my perspective, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You certainly wouldn't want to get to sort of 13 or 14 billion, and that's where we were headed. The marriage thing's a little bit different. The marriage is a reflection, I think, of changes in society, the normalization of living together and the equalization of living together versus marriage, where marriage no longer was imbued with sort of the status that it once was in society, and that's compounded by the fact that marriage, which was a Christian relationship between a man and a woman, has now become a relationship between sort of two blokes, two women, a dog and a cat, or a motor mower. So it's completely changed the status of how society actually works, and has devalued what was once a really important both economic and security relationship.
Okay, Simon.
I was going to start actually with Ashley, similar point. If you look across the world, it's possibly not a bad thing if there's a stabilisation. Now, that's not an argument for stopping having children, but what we're seeing is certain areas are expanding substantially. But in the West, as your statistics point out, we've got a major problem. And it starts with just lacking that information or understanding of the importance of family. As Edmund Burke called it, the little platoon. the mum and dad and a couple of kids. And actually that's an important structure and series of relationships in a working, functioning civil society. And as you would know, Bob, and many of your listeners, a lot of the aspects of society when it comes to anxiety in children or drug use and all of these other things, so much of it comes back to little platoons that don't exist. On the fertility question, well, I'm useless in this space, of course, because I brought nothing to the equation. I've only got the 5 step-kids, and I've also stuffed up your statistics because I got married at 40. But those aside, New Zealand has some serious questions ahead. If we can't replace our own population, it's going to have economic impacts. And then there is that element that Ala just touched on at the start, which is ultimately we're going to have to bring a lot of people into the country. And we're seeing the pressures around elements of multiculturalism. Good academically, but actually a lot of people come with different value systems, different ways of perceiving the world, and there are tensions there that we need to discuss. They're not insurmountable, but they need to be discussed. So complicated in many ways, but marriage good, children good.
Okay. Rodney, marriage good, children good. Why is it decreasing?
Yes, indeed, and I find myself strangely disagreeing with Ashley Church.
Excellent.
Of course, as we
26 minutes past 8 on the 13th of May.
This is a very serious issue because it signals the destruction of the West and all the values of the West. Of course, as people get richer, they have less children because the children survive. And also they're a greater economic burden in their early years. They're not an economic asset like they are in a peasant society. That said, all societies try to grow and get bigger and to get richer and to prosper. And that's not what's happening here. What we're seeing is a radical decrease in fertility and therefore a shrinking of the population throughout the West. And it's one more feature of the West's loss of the high ground, if you like, in the world. And the fact that we can't survive is another feature of it. And why is it the case? Well, I think we all know that because for 60 over years, there has been an economic attack, a social attack, and an ideological attack on the family, on the idea of a young girl growing up to be a mother and a wife, a man growing up to be a husband, to provide for his family, and the fulfillment of having a marriage and children. That's all gone by the by, and it has been decades in the making. And if you wanted to destroy a country or a society, as I regard the West as a society, you couldn't have written a better script or policy prescription than what we're implementing.
Okay, good thoughts. And we're getting a lot of good thoughts coming through from people. Let's just quickly go through them. A couple of different topics as well, though. Craig just talks about how do we get people to enrol for or turn up for elections, bribe those who aren't enrolled with free KFC, and they will flock in. I'd be there myself. Rosie says, Bob, you pronounce the Q in quinoa as a K. So, quinoa. Is that how you say it? You guys are hopeless. You're no help at all. Regarding Pink Shirt Day, David says, is there a pink vaccine? And Eugene says, only if they screen the Pink Panther movie will I wear pink. Back to the serious stuff. Polynuttery says, the vacuum created by population implosion will open the doors to those who hate the West. Just look at the mess in Europe. HB says, well, 14,000 abortions last year. True. Sue Edwards. Bring back the family benefit and other incentives for having more children. Importing people will lead to more problems if they don't have our values. Stephen says, marry a good woman and have plenty of kids. It's a great life. His wife said he could say that. Christine said, is the rate of those children being raised by solo parents increasing or reducing? Asking for a friend. Actually, the children being raised in a one-parent family has risen to about the same rate as those in a two-parent family. And we've got the second highest rate in the world behind the States. So, and that's not a slight on solo parents who are doing a double shift It's really just about formation of family.
Well,
Daryl says, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say that point that one of your noted there. It would be interesting to do some numbers to see if you added the abortion stats to the fertility rate to see whether it has actually dropped over the last 20 years, or in fact it's just simply a reflection of the fact that more children have been murdered before they've been born.
I think Stats NZ actually takes into account based on pregnancies, not the outcome of the pregnancy, but I will check that actually. Ardern's awful extreme abortion laws promoting promiscuity devalues the institution of marriage and decreases fertility rates with women delaying childbirth. Charmaine says, God said, go forth and multiply. And I have to put up Melanie's one because it's just cute. Oh, look at that. 2 doggies. Stacey says, people are also worried about bringing children into the world with the condition it's in. It's an act of faith to bring children into the world. One of the best things I've ever done. Were you worried about bringing children into the world, Alla? Yeah.
No, he actually was. It was a big point of discussion for my husband and I while we were recording. So I agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to do it. It's such a gift. Children are a gift and a reward from the Lord. So, yeah.
Okay. Oops. Oh, gee, I just lost that one that I was going to show you. Okay, I'll find it later. Okay, second topic, team. The school lunches program was launched by Labor in 2019. Today it feeds about 235,000 students at schools in Kura, facing some of the greatest social economic barriers, they say. Labor government allocated 300 plus million for this year, but it's not been funded beyond that. And last week, David Seymour announced 478 million to keep it going until the end of 2026. But some changes. He said students will receive nutritious food that they want to eat. It will be made up of the sorts of food that thousands of mums and dads put into lunch boxes every day for their kids. Forget the, I'm not going to even say that word, couscous and hummus. It'll be more like sandwiches and fruit. And he reckons David Seymour reckons he can save $100 million a year. Got an advisory group, Kids Can, the Heart Foundation, Save the Children and Ryman Healthcare, who are going to reckon they can do it for $3 per meal. And in fact, the group Kids Can reckons they can provide a nutritious school lunch for $2. And just this image, I found this article, which was interesting. Back in 2021, the Labor government was trying to encourage kids to forget about the home-packed lunch and have the state-funded one paid for by you and me. So, and actually it's interesting just the turnaround of David Seymour, because I've got an article here that says that free school lunches is a wasteful policy. That's from ACT. And he really wasn't keen on school and lunches, but now he's funding it with quite a bit. So let's go around and find out, do you support state-funded meals in schools? Is there a better way of doing this? Simon, you were in Parliament when all of this is happening. What's your thoughts?
With a couple of nuances, I'm actually not in support overall. I actually think feeding your children is one of the most fundamental elements of being a parent, and I'm personally always worried about the mission creep, for want of a better term, of the state. So they'll feed your kids, they'll take them from birth to look after and teach, and then there's the questions around clothing and donation. It just becomes more and more, and I mentioned earlier that whole concept of the little platoon. Without being overly militaristic, the whole point of a platoon is it's self-supporting, and that's what your family's meant to be. So overall, not in support actually of the state doing widespread lunch programs, but the really important nuance is we still do need to provide support when it's required. We'll all know of kids, and I work with a charity that actually does support food into schools, but it's particularly targeted, and it is simple. So overall, not in support, but we do need some, if you will, reserve or backup programs. But really, this is something that parents should be doing.
Yeah. Okay. Ashley, should parents be doing it? And if they are, it's supposed to be, why aren't they?
So this is one of those very few issues where I didn't actually know what I thought, because I could see both sides until I just listened to Simon. And I think just listening to Simon, he's persuaded me to his viewpoint. I agree with him. And it's that concept of mission creep, where you do this, and then it becomes clothing, and then it becomes a whole range of other stuff. In fact, you could argue it's already happened in respect to sex education, and a range of other things that are responsibility of the family. And again, like Simon, the only caveat that I would put on that is that there is a subsection of society who are suffering, and who, through no fault of their own, aren't getting nutritious meals and the other sort of basics of life. And for those kids, I absolutely support this. And there is an argument, I remember this at the time, there is an argument that says that if you're going to provide it to those kids, then you don't want to embarrass them, so you supply it to everybody. That's a little bit of a socialist overreach, but I can understand the argument. So yeah, I'm persuaded to Simon's viewpoint.
Okay, Mel, what do you think? I mean, you've worked with a lot of at-risk families. You've seen just the struggles they go through. Is this a poverty issue, or is it a dysfunction issue, or both?
It's both. It's a real hard one because there are plus and minuses. I don't think it should have started in the beginning. I was against it when it was first introduced. However, we've sort of gone down the track now, and a lot of families don't budget for doing school lunches. They don't add that into their weekly budget, and they've sort of become dependent on it, which is sad. So it is hard. We can do it for under $3. I still provide, we've got a young person in our care, and I still do lunches for him, regardless of whether he orders them from the school on the day or not. Yet, with a lot of the kids we have had in care, there's no way they would have been sent lunches by their parents or by their mum or whoever they were with. It just wouldn't have happened. The priority was always drugs and alcohol and everything apart from healthy lunches for their children.
Okay.
Catch-22.
Yeah. Ala, do you think it's up to the schools, or is it up to us to somehow put a rocket on parents to do their job?
Yeah, I'm probably leaning more towards encouraging parents to do their jobs. I mean, this is the state creating some sort of a dependency on them, so that never sounds good in my books. I think more, I guess, healthier or other things that could be done is encouraging schools to, there's other ways to go about healthy eating in schools. And so, for example, community gardens within schools is a good way to incorporate science and learning, but also having something to take home. But I don't think school lunches are the way to go. And from what I've seen in the reporting around its impact, doesn't seem to have much impact on learning or educational outcomes from what I understand. A lot of it is around well-being and increasing nutritional understanding, which is, as a public health, someone with public health training, that's a good thing, but actually that's not what these lunches were intended to do. Somehow it's sort of mission drift, as Simon alluded to. So it's a no for me. I think that money could be spent more effectively. I mean, other programs could be looked at, but not this one.
Okay, actually, a question for you, Ala, as a resident expert, academic, and that is, you have done a degree in public health.
Yes.
Was this ever discussed? Did they ever bring this up as this was the solution to bad nutrition in kids?
No, this is what sort of surprises me, is that sort of this collective regional wide sort of rolling out of school lunches was never discussed in my papers or my classes. A lot of it was around family-oriented programs, around community-based programs, so encouraging healthy eating through the community. The schools obviously are part of the community, but they weren't the first port of call. It was often around families and, for certain communities, churches, their places of worship, but schools were never sort of the first pick. So this kind of threw me, because as someone who's looked into healthy eating programs, school lunches was never across our radar. So I just interesting. It feels like it's just fallen out of the air, and they're like, "Oh, this sounds good. Yeah. Let's just put money here. That's not ours." And a lot of what I find interesting is a lot of the evaluation is really interesting, the way they've worded it, to make it look like that it's had an impact, when in actual fact, if you sort of read between the lines, it's had no real impact on attendance, on learning outcomes. If we look at our NCA achievement levels, there's no positive correlation there. So really, obviously, I'm not trying to say that there isn't a need in terms of food insecurity, that's a different issue, and that should have a different approach. But to sort of have this program roll out as a way to address educational outcomes without actually addressing it is quite fraudulent in my eyes. So, yeah, get rid of it.
Okay, just finally, Rodney, it seems like that we're just pouring it in rather than doing a targeted program, finding the kids that really are struggling, where the families are dysfunctional, or we're just kind of saying, oh, well, let's give it to everybody. Good socialist approach, isn't it?
It's a typical response that we have of incrementalism. And it's an example of a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid, when the question is, what's going on in a household, and we know there are a lot of them, where the poor kiddies are turning up to school without breakfast and with no lunch. And it's not the kid's fault. And we can't expect that kid to be succeeding at school if they're hungry. And so we come up with the Band-Aid of, oh, well, we'll dip into our pockets and we will pay this money through the state to feed kids. Oh, we can't discriminate, so we'll feed all the kids. And here we are. And then we get into an argument at a political level about what kids should be fed and how much it should cost. But nowhere are we asking the fundamental problem is, how was it possible that years ago, when we were a poor country and we went through tough times, parents did everything they could to ensure their kids got to school and were fed, had breakfast and they had lunch. And we know it's not beyond the resources financially of every Kiwi to provide for their kids with our generous welfare system. But we're not dealing with the fundamental dysfunction of drugs and alcohol, of irresponsibility. And in fact, with the free lunches, all we're doing is adding another layer of irresponsibility. And I think it's incredibly sad that we end up debating Band-Aids rather than fixes.
Yep. Okay. The comments are pouring in today. It's quite amazing. Let's just have a look at some of them. Polynuttery says, I don't want to sound like a socialist, but I think it might be a good idea to have schools provide lunches. It provides employment for a company and their workers. You sound like a socialist, Polynuttery. I think it's done by volunteers at some schools. A lot of schools have volunteers doing it. Lisa says, what happens during the school holidays? What about the 6 weeks of summer? Who provides food for these children then? What about weekends? Craig says, I'm pretty comfortable in a tradie and lunches never cost more than $5. Catherine says, even when struggling, when my son was younger as a solo mum, he still always went to school with lunch. David said, one thing you are all missing is the children who don't get to eat because of no hope of parents. It's not the children's fault. Albert says, incremental reliance on the state is socialism. We know how that ends. We live on slave wages in New Zealand. Join the dots. Kevin says, yeah, it's the parents' responsibility, but reality is. Stacey says, my kids always asked me to make extra for their friends who didn't have lunch. I never minded, and it was good for my kids to learn to care for others. Yep, I can relate to that. In fact, I always used to have home baking that my mum gave me. I would sell that to kids who had stuff they'd bought from the canteen. So I got better lunch. It was awesome. Alison said, I agree with Simon. Lunches is part of parenting, parents' responsibility. And then we had a whole lot come in. June says, quinoa, Bob. Susie says, quinoa. Say it with me, Bob. Quinoa. And Tony says, quinoa. I mean, it's written quinoa. Quinoa. I mean, you play that at Scrabble and people would say, what's quinoa? Anyway, okay. Right, just a couple of ads. Simon, I just want to bring you in here because you've got a busy week. Firstly, I need you just to explain this. Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. What is it?
Well, hopefully my alarm works and I turn up, but it's a
yes.
It's a weekly live session to talk about the issues that I see over the last week, but really importantly, for those on Facebook and YouTube and across Twitter and LinkedIn, to talk with me, to send their questions in, Bob, around what they see happening, asking for my thoughts and opinions and comments. So, yeah, from 8 a.m. every Tuesday morning, people get the chance to have a chat with me. I've done this before when I was in Parliament. now looking
Yeah.
forward to doing this through the Family First team.
Okay. And very popular. I just want to know, why did you pick 8 a.m.?
Oh, it's a very civilised hour. Some of us have already been up for a little while, have got things sorted, we'll have our cup of coffee, we're good to go.
Okay. I mean, our producer, Gordon, he will have only gone to bed then, so it's going to be a tough time for him. Okay, second one. Wednesday night,
look,
we're having a chat. What are we chatting about?
Well, I was going to just start grilling you on a whole lot of things. You thought this was about introducing me to your wider Family First family, but I suspect they want me to grill you on what you've been doing these last few years.
Okay, so Wednesday night, 8 to 9, and it's basically, I'm going to introduce Simon, but it is a chance you can send in your questions and we'll answer them live, so that's going to be a bit of fun. And just one other one, on Saturday, we're both going to Wellington to speak at this Unsilenced. Do you want to explain what it is? Sorry to throw you in the deep end on this.
Yeah, this has been started by some concerned New Zealanders who just want to have a middle ground, if you will, discussion on the area around gender in particular. As many people online will know, there's really a very strong singular view that's put through often through the political and media realms, but there's actually a number of parents and individuals around the country who have a different opinion, and they just want to have a civilised discussion about it and not be silent. So yeah, that's in Wellington on Saturday with a real wide array of speakers. Okay,
and if you want to see more on that, go to inflectionpoint.nz, inflectionpoint.nz. Right, here's a team, next topic, here's a Te Pāti Māori MP saying that the government and Karen Chow, the Minister for Children in particular, want to exterminate Māori.
No matter my words today, this government will not waver in its mission to exterminate Māori. The theory of the Minister is that Oranga Tamariki's governing principles should be colourblind, which is just another word for white supremacy. Because to say we are all one people is really to say we should all be white people, erasing the very hue of our identity and culture that makes us whole as tangata Māori, tamariki Māori, mokopuna Māori. The government's reasons to take it away can be summed up in a few short words: racism and Pākehā supremacy. The ACT Party want to keep our tamariki mokopuna in the pipeline from state care to youth residences to youth prison to adult prison to uphold the Pākehā superiority of its voters.
Okay, that's pretty extremist comments, and well, Rodney, let me come to you first, because you've been in Parliament. You expect people to say some of those extreme things, but that seemed to be right over the top and just completely unreasonable. Is this the new norm?
Yes, it is. It is a new norm, and of course it is totally unacceptable. And bear in mind, she wasn't drunk. She wasn't sort of at a function and just letting rip. She was in Parliament, and that was a prepared speech. She was reading from it. So she had thought about it. She'd weighed the words. And just take the phrase that the government is trying to exterminate Maori. That's spoken by a political representative in New Zealand. So what's the appropriate response if, as a race of people, the government is trying to exterminate you? Well, obviously, it's to take up arms against the government to defend yourself. There's no other way to interpret this. I think she's too stupid to realise what she's saying and the sort of actions that she's justifying. But that's where we are in this great country of ours. And again, this is happening around the West, this inflammatory language. And of course, we know that it's not true. There's no attempt by anyone to exterminate anyone in New Zealand. But we hear this over and over and over again. Genocide, colonialism, racism, everything inverted on its head. And ultimately, it's a call to violence. That's what she's doing. And amazingly, and this is a real tragedy, the media and the other MPs stand by silent, too scared to speak up, because to do so is to be accused of being a racist. And so we allow this highly inflammatory language to be used without holding the person to account. I'm fully in favour of free speech. I love it that she can speak her mind. She should be absolutely entitled to. But for those of us that disagree with it, we should be able to speak up. And that's what's not happening. There's no balance to this. She gets away with it. In fact, she gets rewarded with it because she's a strong speaker, leading her people. She gets on the news. She gets talked about. She'll get voted back in because she's pushing hard for Maori. Very dangerous.
Ola, do you agree with that? I mean, is it simply just colourful language?
I think Rodney's summed it up pretty nicely. I don't think it's productive language, that's for sure. I don't know what you achieve with inflammatory language other than inciting violence. And to have a member of the House setting that as an example, I don't know how you can talk in the same breath, talk about children and mokopuna, and that is the example you're setting. And we're seeing this from a lot of our supposed leaders in the House who talk about preserving, things for the future generation, the well-being of our children, and then they get into Parliament and into House, and they're not demonstrating what our children should be like looking up to. So it's just hypocrisy at its finest, and the fact that people are letting her get away with it is just even worse for me. I think people need to be able to. Obviously, one of the wonderful things of living in the West is the freedom of speech, and absolutely she's within her rights. But in terms of the issue that she's trying to address in the House, I don't see how that was productive. If anything, it's just not triggered, but it's probably garnered unnecessary hate towards this particular minister looking after this piece of work and the ministry. So I don't think that's productive language when that gets used in the House.
Okay. Would you agree with that, Mel? Oh, your mic's not on.
Sorry.
Now it is.
What I think she's actually talking about or referring to is some changes within Oranga Tamariki, where they're actually looking to make it more child-focused as opposed to race-focused. And it has been very race-focused for a very, very long time. I remember years ago we were classed as being over numbers, so a youth was removed. That youth was sent to Whangarei. He ran away from the home at approximately 10 o'clock at night. He arrived back at our place. He walked the entire way to Mangatoroto and ended up back at our place in the morning. So we went to a meeting with some of the management and we're told, but you're not whānau. Yet this young person wanted to be with us. He was striving. He was Māori. We're not. But I think she's deeply offended that it should be more, that it's becoming more child-focused rather than race-focused. If there were more Māori caregivers out there, there would probably be more Māori children with Māori caregivers. That's not the case. And sometimes there just isn't the whānau for a young person to be placed with.
Yeah, and that's not the only example I've heard of what you just shared then from other caregivers. Ashley, I mean, the thing that I seem to observe is that there seems to be a much lower standard of behaviour for both the Greens and Te Pāti Māori. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting you should pick those two parties because I was going to say I'm not particularly surprised by this because it's the same diatribe of nuttiness that you would expect from Te Pāti Māori or indeed from the Greens Party. That there's almost a sort of level of now patting them on the head, sort of the rest of society because they're insane basically. Having said that, part of the process of politics, polytainment, which is I guess was what it's becoming, is that we should have the ability to actually scrutinise this and decide for ourselves. And the media has let us down. And in this whole equation, it's actually not Te Pāti Māori because I don't take them seriously, or the Greens. It's the media. The media has a responsibility to bring this stuff to our attention and let us decide for ourselves. And the fact that this didn't find its way into any of the mainstream media until it had become an issue for several days with other parties is actually a real indictment. And the issue is, if this had been said by Seymour, or Luxon or anybody on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, it would have been front page news and it would have been scandalous and everybody would have been talking about how terrible it was. But of course, it never would have been said because they're not stupid enough to actually do that. So for me, the issue here is not so much about what was said because these people are nutters. It was about the fact that the scrutiny is actually, the media is actually not giving us or not giving these issues the scrutiny that they deserve.
Yeah. I mean, I want to know, where is a disinformation project when we need it? Obviously, she's not a right-wing trad mum who braids her daughter's hair. Simon, is this surprising to hear this language? I mean, you must have heard this kind of colourful language, inflammatory language before in the house, wouldn't you?
I have. I think, look, first and foremost, actually, I don't want a disinformation project near any issue. No. I don't want any thought police one way or another. Secondly, the statement of this MP is just utter rubbish, BS, add in all other statements there. Unfortunately, extreme language, inflammatory language is being rewarded more and more over time. It sort of gets celebrated, and I think consciously or subconsciously, MPs, amongst others, trade on that. I mean, look at how social media is going, and I've often spoken about this when I give lectures. It's like a pendulum, and the more extreme it gets out one side, then it flicks out even harder out the other. So you've seen, some statements from the likes of the ACT Party, not at the same crazy level, but they sort of flick out at times too. Seymour is a great one for slightly, not even slightly, more exaggerated language. And so again, like a pendulum, it just gets more and more extreme. But I think the really important thing is it gets rewarded. The next point is it's all the hypocrisy within it. So here's this Māori MP talking about extermination to a minister who herself is Māori. Karen Chor is Maori. So who's going to speak on behalf of Maori here? Well, of course, no one can, because there's no one person who represents a whole race. I mean, that's just crazy. And don't forget as well, the Maori Party last year on their website claimed that Maori were superior biologically and genetically. So here they are talking in one game and are hypocrites on the other, which then leads to Ashley's point, which is, where is the media to call all of this out? And then the final point, because you will want me to stop talking, this fringe behaviour, as I say, is becoming more normalised, more accepted, and it does end exactly where Rodney and Ala have touched on. It ends in violence, and too many people have heard me say this in different contexts, but it really does, because it's about dividing people, and when we keep dividing people, that doesn't lend us to sit down and have a picnic together. It tends to lead us to pick up said basket of picnic and hit each other over the head. So it's dangerous. And it does need to be called out, like we are doing tonight.
Rodney?
Bob? I think we make a big mistake if we say she's a nutter and that she's speaking BS, because it's falling on a very fertile ground. There's an economic and social grievance for good reason, and this is falling into that ground. She's saying it for a good reason because she knows it's a fertile ground. And that's where it gets extremely dangerous. I've made this mistake over my life. I'm a little older than Ashley. And I remember when the gender critical theorists first came to my attention and dismissed them as nutters. Well, now that stuff's through every school and every corporation in New Zealand, and our kids are being indoctrinated in it. So nuttiness, amazingly, has a way of sweeping through a population. And I don't think we deal to it by dismissing it as nutty. Too often I've seen nuttiness actually become policy.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, there was just one question I was going to ask you, Simon, because Oz said, I guarantee she didn't write that speech. It would have been written by a recent grad who totally drank the critical race theory Kool-Aid from Victoria University. Would she be writing her own speeches, or would someone have written that for her?
Depends. Some MPs just speak off the cuff. Some will write their own speech notes, often, but not always. With smaller parties, there is a press team or a speech writer who literally writes the speeches and just hands it to whoever happens to be the MP on duty. So there's quite a high probability this was, if you will, a generic speech, which she just happened to be the one who picked it up in the House. But it's hard to know. You're not actually meant to read speeches in the House. You're meant to actually speak off the cuff, and that's another element which has been lost in our Parliament now, which is a bit sad.
I think you were supposed to wear a tie in Parliament too, but they're not doing that anymore either.
Actually, Simon, it was in 1996 that standing orders were changed. So up until 1996, it was against standing orders to read a speech. No one could read a speech. And following the radical change to the parliamentary makeup in 1996, it was allowed to read speeches. And it's a dreadful change. For the reasons you outlined, people can be actually it's shocking, isn't it, handed a speech to read. There were exceptions. The budget speech was read because it was a very serious thing. Ministerial speeches at first reading of legislation would be read because they'd become part of the architecture of our statutory law. But the idea that an MP would get up and read a speech pre-1996, not only was it farcical, but it was against standing orders.
So where did you put your notes, Simon? I mean, do you put them on the inside of your eyelids or something, or do you sort of stretch them down your arm like a tattoo? Or, I mean, how do people remember what they're supposed to say, or do they just make it up?
I think when you listen to a lot of political speeches, it seems made up. For myself, I very rarely wrote speeches. If you've done the work, if you've actually done the work on legislation, then you can stand up and give a 5 or a 10-minute speech. That's been my basic belief. But Rodney's right. The orders have changed. I mean, Trevor Mallard, when he was Speaker, was trying to pull people back from reading speeches in general, but it was quite an uphill battle. But that's a much longer discussion for another day of how we've ended up with a parliament structured and operating the way it does.
And I actually remember there was a youth parliament recently where one of the youth MPs was reading her speech, and was it Anne Tolley was the leader of the House, and she sort of said, look, don't read off your notes, tell us what you think. And boy, did Anne Tolley get blasted for that. And yet she was just encouraging them to do what the politicians had done. Ashley, could you just speak off like that without notes? Is that you?
Well, Simon's absolutely right. It depends on the topic. There's topics that I could talk about for a couple of hours without need of notes. And there's others where I'd need to be referring constantly. So it really comes down to the amount of work you've done and your level of familiarity.
Okay. What's a topic that you could just speak on 3 hours for?
Bible prophecy. Seriously.
Okay. Seriously. Okay. Remind me not to ask you about it because 3 hours is quite a long time. I don't go to movies that last 3 hours.
Don't ask unless you want to know.
Mel, if you had to speak for 3 hours, what would you speak on?
Shopping, days off, holidays. No, 3 hours. Oh, it'd definitely be youth based.
Youth based stuff. Okay. And Mel, Alla, what's your topic for 3 hours? Off the top of your head.
Working for Bob behind the scenes. No, I'm kidding.
That would bring people to tears.
I don't have one. I mean, doing lectures at university was hard enough. So 3 hours, I'm running the other way.
Okay. I just realised I was over time, so I can't go on to the next topic. So I thought I'd just ask that. I do just want to give you this comment, though, from James, who said, it's a little bit quiet, so it's small, so I'll read it. As an MP, she is entitled to speak for her electorate. The problem is that we have Māori seats which represent a minority of the people in this country. The majority have to put up with this rubbish because of the way Parliament is put together. The same goes for list MPs. They aren't elected through an electorate, yet they get to introduce bills to change our laws. All MPs should be accountable and should be elected by the New Zealand public. So, I think, that is a concern. All right. Look, we need to finish up because someone's got to get to bed really early so that he can set his alarm, wake up, have some coffee and actually sound coherent at 8 a.m. So, Simon, we will join you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. live. And you're everywhere, aren't you? You're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, on the Family First sites, and I missed out one. Twitter.
Just log on to one of your social medias. We'll be popping up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure the mainstream media will be all over it because it'll be so newsworthy. Not. So thank you, Simon, and thank you, Ashley. Great job. And Mel and Alla will let you recover fully from your flu and get back to little Samuel. And Rodney, well done on that pink overalls. Whatever you do, don't wear them to your local school because I think you're supporting the cause. Okay?
No, it's indeed.
Yep. Okay. Okay, team. Fantastic job. We'll be back for our 40th episode next Monday night at 8 o'clock. Until then, you have a great week.